I went into foster care at the age of 8 in 2004, and my story started the following year, in 2005. At the time, I didn't know about the paranormal, and I certainly didn't believe in ghosts, demons, and other things. I was in a children's home, and it was early afternoon if I remember correctly. For some reason that day, I was left alone in the wing where I lived. I can't remember where everyone else was though. I remember sitting on a couch that gave me a bit of a view of the hall where the bedrooms were. I remember staring off into space down the hallway when I noticed a shape emerging from the room I was sleeping in. It was an old porcelain doll, though she looked brand new. She had long, curly, dark brown hair and a pink and white checkered pattern dress. Well, as I watched, she darted from my room to a room opposite mine. I remember being terrified, and I quickly ran and checked both mine and the boy's room. One other thing I recently recalled was several times things of mine would go missing, only to show up in obvious places. An example would be my glasses disappearing off the glasses rack, only to show up under the computer desk, where I was then accused of lying. Fast forward several years, and I'm with my permanent foster family out on a ranch in the plains. Odd things started to happen. We moved into an old farmhouse on my foster parents' daughter and son-in-law's land. A couple of times I would fall asleep, only to be awoken by what felt like someone punching my face when no one was near me. I didn't think anything was odd about that at the time. It was more of an annoyance to my 12-year-old self. I'd hear voices and see shadows, but by that time, I had entirely accepted that as normal and didn't talk about that with anyone. I'd begun getting into scary movies and such while my foster parents were in town, over nights or late nights, and I think that fed into the problem more. Fast forward to 2014, and I had just graduated from high school, highly depressed and hating my life. I had gotten my first apartment and my first job, while my friends and classmates all went to college. I began to fear the shadows and voices I was hearing a bit, though again, I told no one, not even my therapist, just accepting it as normal. I began meeting new people online, and I mentioned that I saw things to one woman who became convinced I was psychic. Though I didn't, and still don't really believe that. By 2016, I was becoming worried about schizophrenia and clamped my mouth shut to anyone about seeing and hearing things, afraid I'd be labelled a crazy and locked up. I met my now ex-boyfriend and had moved in with him in another state after the death of my foster dad. But a new development happened a few weeks after moving in. We were both asleep when I woke up. Unusual for me, as I'm a deep sleeper, and had a mini heart attack when I saw the shadow of a man standing over me, watching me. For whatever reason, I got details about him I shouldn't know, because he was blacker than the dark room. He was in his 30s or 40s, dirty brown curly hair, green eyes, and a red and white pinstripe hat, and his name was Charles. I quickly rolled over and woke my ex up, whispering someone had broken in. But when I turned around, the guy was gone. A night later, we were again asleep. Dark room, and I again woke up. I saw another man standing above me, but this time, the only info I got was he was older, 50s, and he was mean. Again I panicked and shook my ex, and again the figure disappeared. When we woke up the next morning, I had a deep gash on my upper left arm that now has a scar from it. Neither of us could figure out how I managed to do that. The next couple years were filled with occasional nighttime visitors and random bruises. But then came the shadows I could see following my ex or watching me. For context, my ex is 5'9", and we were getting ready for a fun night out. While I was sitting on the bed putting on my shoes, from my peripheral, I watched my ex walk into the bathroom, and following closely behind him was a massive black shadow. I was alarmed to say the least, but I didn't say anything to my ex. Another time, I was again putting shoes on, when from the spare bedroom, I saw the shape of a man materialize and peek his head around a dresser to watch me. We moved again last May to a different state, and it's pretty much the same. One night, I awoke to see this blue glowing mist on the ceiling above me. At first I thought it was my headphones, but I quickly realized my headphones don't stay solid blue for that long. They blink blue when active. For whatever reason, I knew if I went under her, she would hurt me. While watching her closely, I darted around her and turned the lights on. After years of this crap, I finally decided to tell a professional. I couldn't do it anymore. They told me I could be bipolar, and they'd tried mood stabilizers. But there wouldn't be much they could do about seeing things. But if the stabilizers worked, it could be bipolar with some psychosis. I am doing much better, but the seeing and hearing of things has increased. I don't know what to think or feel about the paranormal, and I don't know what I want the conclusion to be. I've noticed sort of patterns within spirits. These are solely my observations, so take them with a tiny pinch of salt. We'll start with the more intimidating ones, demons. Pretty sure some of you might have gotten scared of hearing or encountering one. While I'm not an expert on them, I can say that while they're not beginner friendly to work with, they're not evil per se, just dangerous. Now let me elaborate on that. There are dangerous spirits out there, some that may want to do you harm. Now here's the thing, they're self-aware of this. They can choose to show mercy if they see fit as well. And it's possible to even work with them too. They're like sharks in a sense. If you're careful and know what you're doing, you'll have a better experience. But if you fuck with them, well, it's your own fault at that point. Another thing with demons is culture matters. Folklore matters. Always do your research with spirits in general, but especially with demons, as some demons are more demanding than others. Some want an offering, while others just want to be left alone unless they approach you first. To which you probably should still give an offering as a sign of respect. Now let's step into another touchy subject, deities. Now I don't want to hear of my deity is the true deity, or that deity is evil. Stop. Don't do it. I want a good, clean comment section and discussion here. Now as far as my personal beliefs go, deities are strong entities that desire to be worshipped, as it gives them power, so they can offer guidance and aid in return. They also choose you from birth, not the other way around. And again, in my view, just as not all people are going to feel a connection to certain, if any, deities whatsoever, deities may not feel a connection to certain people as well, and that's okay. However, they still should be respected as, hey, maybe you might run into them. Maybe they might have something to offer in passing. Maybe it's just a pretty nifty thing to do. I've gotten good vibes as a result from going this route too. Even with deities, I just don't feel any connection towards them. Good energy and good advice still come my way. It literally costs nothing to just chill the fuck out and be nice to other people. Also, for those of you who worship a deity, don't hesitate to just talk normally to them. You'd be surprised how receptive they actually are. For me, I worship Ra, and I was talking to him. I had a panic attack in front of him. He tried to calm me down from crying, and then he told a dad joke. A fucking dad joke. Yes, it was adorable, and I loved it and him. It was a nice bonding experience and just shows that it doesn't have to be 100 all the fucking time. It can be chill and wholesome too. Now as for angels, there's Enochian, and then there's Shemhamphorash angels. I can't speak on behalf of the Enochians as I need to do more research. I'll update accordingly if anyone is interested after I look into them. As for the Shemhamphorash, these are the angels that the most people have probably heard of, such as the archangels. There's 72 Shemhamphorash that each have some form of aid to offer. From my experience, they're pretty much the least judgmental of entities. Very chill, but can be firm if need be. Like a parent, teacher, or therapist, basically. How chill are they? One time I played a game of telephone with them. I asked for a consent first, and in the words of Jafeel, it was a big mess. I shouldn't be a witch, to be honest. Also, fun fact, Ariel is an angel that not only helps aid fishermen, but is also called upon to cure stupidity. Now let's tackle one of my favorites, fairies. These guys are not like all the fucking Tinkerbell. It's also more like an umbrella term, as many spirits fall under the category of fairies, such as elves, ogres, mermaids, sprites, pixies, goblins, dwarves, and more. Many are also quite dangerous, some more so than others. But I've noticed some things here as well. There's two courts, Seelie and Unseelie, but there's also regions that aren't aligned with either one. I just call them the Seelie area or Unseelie area, just to make it easier basically. Seelie fairies are more playful and have an air of unreal beauty to them. They also prefer warmer climates as spring and summer are their seasons. They're also very approachable for the most part, beginner friendly. However, even the most beautiful of things can hold a great deal of danger, or at least mischief. At the very least, they might steal from you, and at most, they can be rather frisky or try to use you or fuck with you. If you want to work with them, leave an offering in a place of nature. Then there's Unseelie fairies. These fair folk are much more beastly-like, in both air and image. I'ma warn you here, they don't normally like humans. Why? For some it's personal, and for others it's just because we fucking exist. With that said, it's not impossible to work with them. You just gotta be patient, respectful, and leave a gift. If you're lucky enough to befriend them, they're fiercely fucking loyal and protective. They'll be more than ready to fuck up a besh if anyone fucks with you. Needless to say, I had to tell my companions no a lot. These days, they know me well enough to ask me first, make sure I'm okay, and go from there. So it's pretty nice. Sometimes it would be serene. I'd be sitting on a log in a clearing in a forest, next to the remnants of the chimney, and converse with an unseen force. I would feel no ill will, no malicious intent, only a faint feeling of joy. Upon moving away from my childhood home due to personal matters, I stopped having the dreams and nightmares. I moved out when I was 16. I'm now edging up on 26 years old with a wife and 2 kids, and we've recently moved into a new house. As an intermission, I did have a dream about this entity once while I was in the military, and it came in a series of dreams. This is the only dream I can actually remember bits of this demon, so here are the bits I remember. Series started with me hanging out with a group of kids, and we appeared to be homeless. I didn't recognize any of the kids' faces that I was with, nor did I recognize any of the environment we were residing in. There was one particular girl in the group that I felt a strong attachment to, something like I needed to protect her. However, in the second dream, me and some of the boys were playing basketball, when I got a weird, overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. I immediately ran off to try and find the girl I felt protective of. I looked everywhere, but couldn't find her. For some reason, I decided to check an abandoned library, where deep in a narrow corridor, I found the familiar chimney in a room that looks like a typical, long-abandoned building. As soon as I stepped into the room, there was a violent shake, as well as a loud scream, before more of the roof collapsed and killed me again, causing me to wake up sweating in the real world. Now recently, I've been having dreams with the same feeling of dread I felt at the beginning of when I moved into my childhood home, so I know I'm being visited by this entity again. I live in a suburb for context, and the closest major city near me is Manhattan. So I'm not located in a secluded or low-populated area. That being said, I've been hearing the same whistling for a couple months now. It's not extremely common, but it happens enough times that I've noticed it. And it also only happens at night or in the early morning. The whistle itself starts off high-pitched and then goes down, and it repeats itself over and over again. And it sounds breathy, if that helps visualize it. It's clearly not from an object. It's from something that's alive. Now that I'm writing this, it's most likely some kind of bird, but it still sounds creepy to me. The first time I heard it was during 2 to 3 a.m., and the whistling itself was accompanied by the sounds of someone walking by my window. And I do remember it became quieter the further it walked by. It still scared me shitless because it just came out of nowhere. But the reason I'm writing this is because I encountered the noise last night while I was outside. My house is across from a park, and most suburban parks are just an open field with one playground and a basketball court. The park itself is spacious and open, but again, not that huge. I have this habit of going on the swings when I'm bored during the day and night while I listen to music. So the music on my phone cuts out, and then I hear it. And I sounded the same as it did when I was near my window, and even at the same volume. I got off the swings and walked back to my house, but now that I'm looking back on it, I don't remember hearing it again after getting off the swings. I'm just curious as to what the people on here might think it is. My neighbour was 4 years older than me, and she always had me over to her house to hang out. She even was kind of a babysitter for me a lot of the time. One day, she had another friend her age over, and myself over. She had a Ouija board and said she was going to talk to ghosts or something like that. Apparently, she had done this before, because it seemed she knew exactly how to set up the area. She lit a bunch of little disc-shaped candles, had the lights off, and we all sat on a bed which was against the wall. I'm a little hazy on the specifics, but after asking a few questions, and then more advanced ones, I swear the Ouija board started to move across her bed and up the wall. We still had our hands on the sight glass as somehow the whole assembly worked its way onto the wall and started rubbing vigorously against the wall. She turned the lights on and blew out the candles, and the board stopped and fell to the bed. I remember her dad flipping out the next day because the board left a huge black imprint on the wall and he had to paint it. Who knows? Maybe it was just her and a friend playing an elaborate prank on me, but she never told me in the years I knew her it was a prank. We're no longer in touch, but I'm considering asking her more about it by sending her a Facebook message sometime. Has anyone else had Ouija experiences like this? A while back, I think I wrote about how I heard voices when I was home alone in my kitchen, after staying with friends for the night. It was basically that the friends I had stayed with for the night had been having paranormal experiences for months, mostly hearing disembodied voices in their kitchen. And then I found out that they had taken many things from a haunted place we had gone to together once. The night after, I was home alone, and I heard voices in my own kitchen, to the point where I thought my mom had come home and was speaking to my grandma in the driveway. She didn't come home until hours later. Recently, probably around 10 p.m. at night, I was down in the kitchen making myself a super late dinner, when I turned around and seconds later, I heard something slam onto the floor behind me. It was a wrench. This wrench was on the counter literally moments before, pushed back nowhere near the edge. It was now on the floor, and it didn't look like it had fallen. It looked like someone had swiped it off the counter from how far it went. There have also been multiple instances in the past couple months where I'll be taking a bath and I'll audibly hear something moving in the room with me. The bathroom is really small. It holds the sink, tub, and toilet, and that's about it. And I could hear shuffling on the floor next to me. Of course, I go to look, and nothing is there, not even a fly. I've also been hearing really, really loud banging on my bedroom door. So loud it makes me jump. When I open it, no one is there, and when I ask my family members if they knocked, they say no. Half of the time it happens, I'm the only one upstairs. I don't know. I just think it's weird that the paranormal activity in my house has been picking up in the last couple of months. Just had an awesome session. Bought a spirit box, which has a built-in temperature measurement device. Basically, makes sound according to how big of a difference there is, and lights up or flickers red or blue. Bedroom, only me and my girlfriend, with the window open. Could feel the cold air on my feet, Spirit box on my lap. Asked for an increase in temperature and it was delivered. Had some intelligent responses during the whole roughly 3 hours. A lot of them are really personal. We're sort of a new couple, and it's really possible we were talking with my girlfriend's great-grandma. She said, "Write it down." My girlfriend told me to open notes on my phone. I did, and the same voice said, "Sign, personal stuff." I didn't know about my girlfriend's family. The LED was glowing red for a solid 2 minutes. After a while, I asked for blue light, so I closed the window and soon after, blue again. Before all of this, we went to a basement or flat in the building share. My girlfriend was previously uneasy and felt like being watched or dark energy was in there. Around 5 months ago, I tried an EVP session there and didn't get a single strange noise or voice. Today, I had headphones on, not being able to hear a single voice around me. A deep male voice, mostly heard after being asked, said the name Kuba, which is Jacob in my language, multiple times. Once, I even said, "Behind you." 2 minutes after that, my girlfriend freaked out and repeatedly told me to get the F out of the basement, not explaining why. I myself kind of freaked out and we ran out. While closing the door, the same deep voice said, "Don't go," followed by a woman half screaming, "Help." Then she told me she saw something dark and heard a growl behind me. I don't know where to start, but since nobody will believe me, I only told these to my close friends and they witnessed it themselves. I sometimes see very vivid dreams about the future, and it always happens. What I see is a chart of planets. A straight line has many rounds, and many small planets are orbiting around those rounds. There are little ticks on the line, and that represents the time. The color and brightness of the stars represent the event and probability. When I see these dreams, I usually know when something will happen. Below are some examples. I used to breed fish when I was in high school. One day, I saw the fishes fly in the room and the space chart showed around 1 week. I saw black and red stars and 7 ticks. Exactly after 7 days, all of them died because of chlorine. My father changed their water without checking. I had the same dream some months later, but this time, I didn't let anyone change anything. Then again, after 7 days, the fish jumped out of the fish tank and died. This happened so many times, whatever I did, I couldn't save the fish. One day, I saw 3 ticks with a water planet in my dream. At that time, my village had a drought problem. People gathered to pray for rain, and I told them it would flood after 3 days. Nobody cared. After 3 days, it flooded for the first time in the village. When someone makes me sad, terrible things happen to them. It's almost like something is taking revenge for me. For example, I used to feed kittens under the apartment. One day, a man complained to me and yelled at me, saying cats are dirty and they would shit everywhere. I was really sad, since there are people who do not help but bother others helping kittens. Poor animals were hungry and screaming, like begging. After a while, that man had a stroke and he's now paralyzed. He can't move his legs or arms. When I was in university, someone borrowed money from me and didn't pay back. He basically scammed me. We argued in front of everyone. Then one day, he ran into trouble with locals. He was beaten, sent to jail. All of his stuff was stolen and he was deported from the country. There are many examples like this. Every time someone hurts my feelings, something serious happens to them. Some of my friends witnessed this, and now they're too scared to talk to me. I saw the young grandpa in my dream. I never saw him in real life, and I never saw his picture. I told my father that he looked exactly like one of my uncles. He was shocked. He saw when he was young he looked exactly like him, but it was impossible for me to know. In my dream, he asked for some bean soup. He was happy when I gave it to him. I still don't know what it meant since I didn't see any planet charts. I met many people at events and I saw 2 people in my dream with huge bright stars. I told them about it and told them they would be very famous within some years. Both of them are famous now. I have Asian eyes, but I was born in the Middle East. I saw the space chart in my dream, and it showed three bright stars with red and black, and one bright white star in the background. White star was much bigger. The chart showed around 14 planets, which meant 14 years. I was 4 years old when I saw this dream. In my dream, I was in China and I was missing my country. I remembered my future face, body, and hair very clearly. Exactly when I was 18 years old, I ended up in China studying. At that point, I didn't remember the dream at all. After I arrived in China, I remembered the dream. I didn't understand those three bad stars. Then 3 years after I arrived in China, horrible things happened, proving the stars. In my dream, I was running away from monsters with long hair and a muscular body. When I was 4 years old, this made me very scared. I looked very strong, but I was still running away. When I graduated, I just left China. I was powerlifting, and I had long hair for the first time. It was exactly like I saw in my dream when I was 4. Sometimes I have extremely bad luck for many days from day to night. After having multiple bad luck, I get one miracle in return. That miracle is always something that saves me from an important disaster. For example, I changed companies and I was going to greet the customers for the first time. That day, the subway suddenly stopped working. Exactly the only time I should have not get late, I was late. When I arrived after a long time, the bus went to the wrong airport. This also happened for the first time. After the bus arrived and we took the customers, the driver fell down and broke his arm. That week was disaster after disaster. Then the next job I had required me to take some tickets from a friend. We were supposed to meet in another city, but our plane time and check-in door was the same that morning. Later, we realized the message was wrong. He gave me the tickets, and if our plane was not at the same time and same place, I would never get the tickets, and it would be a disaster for me. Same day, same hour, 2 doors next to each other. These super coincidences almost always happen after multiple bad luck days. So when I have some bad luck days, I know it is charging energy to save me from a disaster again. My luck always tries to stop me from whatever I want. For example, my dream was to win a taekwondo competition. My teacher told me I'd be a world champion. I was exceptionally talented and managed to beat black belts with only 3 months of training. Then, as soon as I prepared for a competition, I had to have surgery. I had 6 surgeries in total, and all of them were when I prepared for the competition. After 6 surgeries, I was too scared to join a competition. I didn't want to go to the hospital again. It's totally unrelated. I've not gone to the gym for some years. One day, I decided to try again. I thought it was just a coincidence. Then as soon as I prepared to join a competition, I got hospitalized again, and I was told to have surgery. I'm over 30 years old now. I'm still scared to join competitions. Because whenever I try, I either have an accident, illness, urgent things, etc. happen. Whenever I study or work for a dream, this happens. Also, whenever I try to meet a girl, embarrassing accidents happen, or I receive urgent work. Life does not want me to achieve anything and get close to anyone. I almost feel like my life is a game, and a jealous person is controlling it. I had a dream about a friend. She had no job or purpose at that time. I told her she would find a job and have friends if she went to a certain country. She went there, and as soon as she returned, she found a job and had new friends. She witnessed many things, so she believes me. I can know if a good thing or bad thing will happen after a while, and how serious it will be. Before COVID, I also had a dream that I would quit my job for a long time, within a month. After 1 month, Corona happened. The size, colour, shape of the planets, and number of the ticks give time, and I see a brief dream about the details. Then it happens. There are only 2 dreams I remember now from the past. I would marry when I'm 35 years old and die at 90. It's been a long time since I had this kind of dream. 8 months ago was the last one, and I saw myself as a student with 6 planets. Then exactly after 6 months, I was accepted by a university for a master's degree. Yesterday, I was over at one of my friends' houses for a birthday party. All went well. Nothing else of the ordinary. We were all sitting on couches and chairs around a normal sized table, and there were two people on a couch that could fit three people. The other seatings were all taken. At one point, a friend tried to get a game working and stood up to fix something with his switch while standing. My back was facing basically the whole open house, as we were all sitting in the living room, in which I was facing all the other people and a window. Just before the dude started fixing his switch, I got a feeling we were missing someone. Which we were. But the friend missing was arriving later. So we hadn't seen him yet, but something felt off. I had the thought that somebody behind me was busy in the house and could arrive any time to sit with us again. For some reason, it seemed logical to me for that person to sit with three people already on a couch. This didn't make sense, as there's no place for anyone, and we were not waiting for anyone that we already saw. At a certain point, I thought it may have been the sertraline I've been taking for a few months. Maybe they have a weird side effect. I just brushed it off, and I was thinking nothing of it, but the feeling that we were missing someone just kept persisting. After about 2 or 3 hours, the friend arrived, and I thought the feeling would just go away, as everyone was here now. But it stayed, and I genuinely kept thinking we were missing a person when pouring drinks, or when we were deciding on a movie. After a few more hours, I got a bit annoyed with the feeling, and I just asked out loud if I was the only one. As it turned out, 3 other guys had the exact same feeling, and they thought they must be imagining things. At a certain point, we just thought about people we may have missed, inviting, but we couldn't figure it out. After that, we tried to use a makeshift Ouija board, but nothing came of it, but the feeling did persist for me at least. When I got home and got a good sleep, I still kept thinking about how weird of a coincidence this was, but then I thought that maybe it could be something explainable. When I was 8 years old, I slept on the top of a bunk bed. I would wake up in the early hours when everyone was sleeping and across the room, only about 6 feet away. I would clearly see the silhouette of a man. The silhouette was so dark, you couldn't distinguish any features at all. It just stood there, directly opposite where my head was on the bed. At first, I wasn't particularly freaked out. I think I must have reasoned it was my dad in the absence of any other explanation. This happened night after night for weeks. After a while, I reasoned it wasn't my dad and started to become a little unnerved, so I began sleeping with my head at the other end of my bed. But the figure moved too, so it was always opposite where my head was positioned. There was still no real feeling of ill intention or anything like that during these experiences, but still, it was understandably becoming a little scary. After some time, I told my mum what was happening. Not sure she believed me, but just to comfort me, she said it was probably Jesus watching over me. We aren't a religious family at all, but as I say, I think she just assumed I was dreaming or had an overactive imagination, and just said this to offer a benevolent explanation. At some point after that, the next experience I had was very different. This time, I saw the figure, but it was a dream. A very vivid one. But certainly a dream. It started exactly the same as usual, but this time, I asked the figure if it was Jesus. The figure then lunged towards me, shouting at me, and then I woke up. After that, I never saw it again. I continued living there, in the same bedroom for years after, and nothing ever happened again. In my teens, I spoke to my mum about it again. She didn't remember me telling her about it at the time, but she did say that when I was very young, just about old enough to string a sentence together, and in that same bedroom, I had an imaginary friend, who I described at the time as a boy my own age who looked like one. One day, he said he had to leave as he had a pain here, after which I told my mum at the time I never saw him again. My mum had a younger brother who died aged 6. He looked like me, and my brothers when we were his age. He died during heart surgery to correct a congenital heart defect. Tonight was a weird and fun night, because I saw two shooting stars. Me and my sister were stargazing in our garden. The night was just absolutely breathtaking. But right around 2:50 a.m., we heard strange celebratory music. It didn't have any lyrics. It felt like it was happening right next to us or was coming from somewhere in our house. It sounded like a large group of people celebrating, but in a very cult freak kind of way. The whole night in general was full of weird appearances, but that was because of the sky and it didn't really induce anxiety in me at all. But this shit show music literally scared the fuck out of me. I listen to all music, okay? I fuck with folk music. This sounded like Tiptoe Around the Window by the Windmill. And no, it wasn't actually that song, but it follows the same type of chords, but it's even creepier and lacks lyrics. It was also more rowdy, very vintagey, with a hint of classical. The second my sister said, "Get my phone and record it," and I started recording, the music literally stopped. The crowd, after stopping, then went ooh, ah, which sounded like the music which I managed to capture. And say, if there was a party occurring elsewhere in one place with that much noise, it'd be constant, right? I wouldn't just play one song, have thunderous clapping and cheering, and then just stop. And it seems strange to me that someone in my neighbourhood will be having a party till 3 a.m. with creepy folk music with no lyrics. I tried looking for something online who might have had the same experience, but God, I could find nothing. My 6-year-old daughter has always shared things with us. Sometimes creepy, mostly like, what the fuck, how did she know this? Age 2. I just found out I was pregnant and had only told my husband. We didn't want to tell my daughter because I had miscarried before and didn't want her to get excited. One evening, we were eating dinner and my daughter turns to me and says, "There's a baby in your belly." My eyes went big and turned to my husband and asked if he told her. He swears he didn't. I asked her if it was a boy or a girl and she responded, "It's a boy, but I wanted a girl." Sure enough, her baby brother arrived safe and sound 9 months later. The thing that gets me is that she told everyone at daycare. I was a bit nervous in case I miscarry again. Then one day at daycare, she turned to her teacher and said, "There's a baby in your belly too." She laughed and said, "No, that's your mom, not me." However, a week later, her teacher came to me and said she was pregnant and asked my daughter if it was a boy or girl. Daughter said girl and said, "Well, she had a girl." Age 5. My mom has a history of heart attacks. One day, she went to the ER thinking she may be having one, but turns out it was an AFib. I was a nervous wreck in the morning, but was fine in the afternoon once I'd heard she'd be okay. Went to pick up my daughter from school. She was balancing on a table and fell backwards, but was fine. I picked her up and said, "It was more scary than anything, right?" My daughter responded with, "Yeah, but you know what's scarier? Omar dying." I was like, "Why did you say that?" I didn't tell her my mom went to the hospital, and we don't see her often. She was like, "I don't know," and went on her merry way. Age 6. Last night, my husband was putting her to bed. He came down and told me right before she fell asleep. She turned to him and went, "Have you ever been on a haunted train?" My husband was like, "No." I asked why that freaked him out. He showed me a text from 30 minutes earlier from his sister, sharing a link to a ghost train on Groupon. I'm told we should be used to it by now, but sometimes she still gets us. Seven years ago, when I was a pest control tech, I was scheduled to do a routine service at a missionary house on the grounds of a large church. It was a typical single-family home, a few hundred yards away from the church, but not within sightline. Also in an open field, about 50 yards from the main road. There was nothing unusual about the house or its location. I went to the church to get the door key, and was told the house was not currently being used. I drove over to the house to start the service. I went in through the back door in the kitchen, and announced my presence as per normal, even if you think no one's there. As expected, there was no response. I went into the basement to start spraying. I work from the bottom floor up, so the plan was to start in the basement and service each floor up to the walk-in attic. Basement service is normal, so I go back up to do the main floor. When I enter the kitchen again, every single cabinet and drawer is open. I freeze in place and announce my presence again. No response. I think it's weird, but I continue spraying the main floor. As I'm walking the main floor, all the hairs on my body start to stand up. I finish quickly and go to the stairs to head up. I get to the third step, and I get a feeling of dread and decide to not finish, so I go back out to my truck. Once outside, my nerves settle, so I get my backpack sprayer to start the exterior. The entire time I'm treating the exterior, I have a feeling somebody's watching me, and my hairs start to stand up again. I checked all the windows as I went around, but I didn't see anything or anyone unusual. I've been stressed the past few weeks. My mind is in deep thought over what happened during winter last year. I'm no stranger to hearing or seeing ghosts. Of course, I never felt a reason to tell anyone my experiences, because there's always uncertainty behind what is seen or heard, and what if. I'm from Texas. At the time, I lived inside a house that had no central cooling, with the temperature of the house being the outside temperature or close to it. During last winter, it had been freezing inside. The weeks before that day, I kept hearing what sounded like someone calling my name throughout the house, whenever no one was home. My parents had just left for the store for groceries, while I felt a little uncomfortable being alone due to hearing a voice calling my name. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I hear my voice being called. I'll go look, see nothing, and watch more TV. Simple, I thought. They left the house and the house temperature felt extremely cold. So I laid back on the recliner we had and put on a classic movie. Covered myself in a blanket while wearing pajamas and a sweater, comfortable as I could be. I remember feeling sleepy after getting comfortable. Then, it happened. I heard a guy's voice call my name. I pumped myself up and said, "Let's do this." Got up, walked around the house, and saw nothing like I expected. However, how could I get comfortable again knowing once I relax, I'd hear something? We've all seen the movies where the person relaxes and thinks, "I can't let my guard down." Then everything goes downhill. I made a deal with myself. I'll record myself sleeping. Either nothing will happen and I'll fall asleep, or I'll finally record it to show my parents I'm not crazy. It's a win-win deal. Sadly, the outcome was what I hoped wouldn't happen. I put my phone onto a table that is used for drinks near the recliner. Set it to record myself on the couch, slowly drifting off into sleep, thinking, nothing will happen while it's recording. I woke up to what seemed to be half an hour later to a loud crying from a woman's voice. Me being drowsy, looked around to find the source of the noise. There was a hole beside the recliner. Sounds weird, but the owner didn't lay the floorboard down correctly, and it eventually broke. We put a temporary board over the broken part, but it left a little hole because it didn't fit exactly. The crying was coming from beside me and in the exact direction of the hole. I looked directly at it, realizing what's happening, jumped straight up and backed away in shock. The sound faded. I questioned if what I just heard could have been me waking from a lingering dream. The only way to confirm is to check if the recording is still going. I collected my phone from the table and paused the recording. Thoughts ran through my mind while getting my headphones to listen closely. 1. I'm going to hear nothing and realizing it was only a lingering dream, sit back down and laugh off my paranoia. Or 2. I will hear it and confirm a dreading truth. I went outside and didn't exactly feel comfortable inside anymore. Temperature was around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Even though the power went out a few times during the winter for a good part of Texas, they weren't prepared for snowy weather. I sat on the porch, headphones on, fast-forwarding the video until I saw myself wake up and rewind a few minutes before to see the truth. My heart raced with anxiety. In the video, I slept like normal. Then a noise came into the audio. It sounded like an eerie whine that became louder until the audio started cutting in and out like distortion. In the video, I woke up to the noise and looked around with sleepy eyes before looking at the floor and jumped up. I got chills. Writing this now when it's 4 a.m., I have goosebumps everywhere. I waited outside in the freezing cold, waiting for my parents to come home. I didn't want to go back inside. What I did next, I'll have to explain my reasoning. I've been through a lot. Near-death experiences plenty, poverty, an abusive father, and terminally ill mother. Yes, the parent I have is my stepfather. I calmed down and went back inside. I went to the living room where it happened and closed my eyes. My brother passed away when I was a teenager. Sometimes when I'm going through hard times, I'll speak to him as if he hears me. I said, "Brother, I don't know what to do. I'm hearing noises and it's weighing on my mind. I can't sleep or relax even in daylight, and I finally have proof it's not inside my head. Love you and miss you. I'm going to keep trying." Feeling more relaxed, I started to make a prayer. I'm a Christian, but I'd be lying if I said I followed my religion to every word. I'm not 100% on who or what God is or what religion, so I pray, pouring my heart out, hoping God understands my ignorance and guides me from trouble. I said in my prayer, "Please give me guidance. I understand people die, and I'm not sure how death works." The crying I heard sounded like a woman in sorrow. It scared me at first. All I can do is pray, not for my own fear, but to show whatever it is guidance and love. Lead it from darkness into your light, so it ceases to suffer any longer. I took a deep breath and opened my eyes. I no longer felt worried. My heart felt at peace. I realized sometimes fear is from ignorance of not knowing how it works. I hear a scary cry and think instantly of fear and ghost videos, scary movies and death. I never think how it must feel to be stuck in a house or feel alone in some dark place. A family member or friend, neighbor to someone at one point. Writing this now, I don't feel stressed anymore. So in the summer of 2018, a group of friends of mine invited me to a trip to Bali, Indonesia. It ended up being a trip of 6 women and 6 men, and I knew around half of the people beforehand, and I got to know the rest during the trip. We went around the island, ate great food, enjoyed the views and culture, and we were all in our early to mid-20s back then, so we would always end the night with a night out at the bar or nightclub. I believe it was my 3rd night on the island. After the night out, we were in groups of 4 or 5. We got a cab and headed back to our villa separately. I was one of the people that arrived in the villa last, and I believe it was approximately around 2 a.m. when I arrived. My roommate and some friends decided that they were going to bed first, but I wanted to have a cigarette prior to getting ready to pass out in my room. Before going any further into the story, in order to make this story more clear, I need to tell you about the layout of the villa. The villa's estate is rectangular, and when you enter, you'll see an outdoor kitchen and somewhat of a living room that's outdoor, including a few couches and a TV, and a statue of Buddha. Then, there's a pool which next to it has 6 glass doors that lead into 6 different rooms. From the deciding to have a cigarette part, for the record, I was not too intoxicated, nor too tipsy at this moment. I decided to light up a cigarette in front of my room door, and I was looking around the ambient view of the pool and the living room space. Then I saw a shape of a girl sitting on the couch, but she was looking the opposite direction of me. Thus, I was looking at the back of her head. At this point, I didn't think of anything weird, and thought it was one of the girls that stayed in the villa with us. Then I got a chill all over my body, because I didn't recognize her hair with any of the girls that we were with. In this moment, for some stupid reason, I decided not to freak out, and I felt like I wanted to show I wasn't scared of this random ghost, spirit, girl. And I decided to finish smoking the rest of the cigarette, and I threw it approximately 5 feet next to her direction when I was done. Then I opened my room door and saw my roommate already asleep. For some reason, I was able to fall asleep quite shortly after. I don't usually get sleep paralysis, maybe once prior to this trip. I fell asleep in a position where my face was half in the pillow and half out. Then I woke up and I could not move my body. The first sense was my sight. Then I realized I couldn't move. Then realized I felt something on my cheeks. It was a black, straight hair on my cheeks, and I could only move my eyeballs. This was the most chills and panic that I ever felt in my life as I tried to see what it was by side-balling my eyes as much as I could. Then I saw a face that was also side-balling to stare at me. I was dying inside. My heart was beating like crazy, and I think that this girl or ghost also knew that I was pissing my pants. Then the killer. She almost screamed her laugh with her mouth directly in my ears, like ha ha ha, rapidly, with the highest pitch of laugh I've heard. I didn't know what to do, but it was like my body was in fight or flight mode. I somehow managed to ball my fist, then the rest of my body woke up. Then I was screaming, "What the fuck?" and woke up my roommate and some people in the villa. There was nothing that was on top of me when I woke up. Currently, I'm home alone. Parents are hanging out with friends, brother is back at college, sister is sleeping over at a friend's house. Girlfriend and friends came over for a swimming party. Friends left roughly an hour ago. Girlfriend left roughly 30 minutes ago. Well, during the party cool-down phase, I noticed the light on in my sister's room. I had to go upstairs anyway to grab some dry clothes, so I flipped off her light on the way. I know I flipped it off because she has a blue nightlight thing that stays on during the night, and I remember seeing its glow when the light turned off. I went to my room, changed, and walked out seeing it. I thought to myself, maybe I didn't hit the light switch right because I just reached around the corner to turn off the light. So I went in and turned off the light and made sure it was off. Went downstairs, said goodbye. Girlfriend helped clean up the pool area, and that's when I saw it again. Me and my girlfriend both went upstairs and we both saw the light turned on. So she left after a few more minutes. I went into the living room to watch TV. You can see my entire backyard from the living room. I looked out and noticed the fence opening up, which wasn't bizarre and happens a lot because it's kind of slanted. I went outside to go close the fence and put the hook on it to keep it shut, and as I'm walking back, I look up, and guess what? Light on again, and I see it shaking. I go back in and go upstairs and see every possible light is on in her room. Her vanity mirror, LED speakers, closet lights. And her main light with the fan was going so fast, I thought it was about to fall off the ceiling. I turn everything off and leave the room. Not 2 seconds later, I hear the click again. I yelled, "Fucking hell," and turned around, seeing the light on again. I reach around to flip it off, saying "stop" loudly. As I reach around, I feel a moist, ragged hand over the light. I thought my sister was pulling a prank and went around. Nothing was there. I turned off the light and closed the door. If that light is still on now, so be it. I had a weird occurrence once when I was a teenager, maybe about 15 or 16. I really don't remember. Sometime in the mid-2000s. I spent most of my early to late teenage years in a small town named Cresco in Iowa. So let me set the scene for this story. I woke up early one cold Sunday morning while it was still dark out, about 5 something in the morning, to get ready for my paper route job. I got all of my stuff ready and into my courier bags to set on my route, leaving my house to start the job. Once I left my house, I started to walk down the sidewalk to the corner of the intersection to cross the street in order to get to the next street to head north. I have to pass a large 3-story building that I believe used to be an old school at one time that is now just used for storage and whatnot for the fitness center that's attached to the right and a few houses and an alleyway to my left. I had a weird feeling that something was wrong, and I looked over to the opening of the alleyway and saw the weirdest and creepiest thing. Underneath the lamppost, illuminated by the light, was a puddle of darkness. I have no idea what it was. Ooze? I know it wasn't water. It moved and rippled like it, but it wasn't it. I just stared at it for like a few seconds and I was like, nope, not today, and just walked away from the area to do my job. I returned like half an hour later while I was still dark out, and it wasn't there anymore. Like, what the hell was it? A figment of my imagination? A doorway to hell? Ooze from another world? I don't know. Cresco had its strange and fucked up bouts of weirdness going on in that small town. First, my mother is the only one who told me this story. FYI, I'm 16 now. When I was about 2 or 3 years old, Hurricane Ike happened, so my mom and I had to move back in with my grandmother. I've been in this house since, with occasional moves, but that's not the point. The point is what happened during that time in my life that I don't remember. First thing that happened, we had just moved in, and my mother said I was speaking to someone in the play area, but there was no one there. She asked me who I was talking to, and she told me I said, I'm talking to my friend Billy. He's a little boy with no face. For some context, my older cousin and a family friend had both seen a ghost with the same description around the house, so they knew what I was talking about, but I was the one who named him Billy. How my older cousin saw him was before bed. He was lying down, and he asked my grandmother who the little boy was standing in the bathroom doorway, but there was no one there. He gave her the same description, a little boy with no face. I don't remember what happened with the family friend. All I know is she never came back to the house. Another thing that happened was a different spirit. I was in the living room, and my mum and grandma went in the other room. We were the only ones in the house. They told me when they came back, all the pictures on the wall were turned backwards. These pictures were in places a 2-year-old couldn't possibly reach and turn around within the short 5 minutes they left me alone. So they asked me what happened, and I said it was the tall man. They were freaked out by this. Another family friend of ours had stayed the night in the living room one night, and she saw someone standing behind the curtain. She too never came back to the house after that. Very recently though, about around the time quarantine had started, I was outside with my uncle's dog and was about to go in when I saw one of the blinds in my grandma's bathroom go up, as if someone was peeking out at me. I looked, and after a couple seconds, it slowly went back down like someone had done it. I thought it was Grandma checking on me, but the room was pitch black, and turns out there was no one near the bathroom when it happened. To this day, I'm convinced it was the tall man or Billy. To give some backstory, my father passed away back in 2008 when I was 14. He had a flip phone, and his voicemail was him saying his name, Dan Crouch. When he passed away, we kept his cell phone so we could call it and hear his voice. One day, my mom purchased me a cell phone, and she wanted the phone tech guy to transfer my dad's voicemail sound onto my phone. He said it transferred over, but we found out later it didn't. The flip phone was handed into the phone store, so we lost the recording of his voice. Fast forward to 2015, I found a woman I fell in love with. We hung out all day every day, never left her house for at least a week. Well, one day, when I spent the night at her place, we were both lying in bed, and she's cleaning out her voicemails. She had about 10 or so. After she deletes a few, the voicemail says, "The following message will be deleted from your mailbox. Your message from Dan Crouch is not available. To relay this message, press 1. My father sent my girlfriend a voicemail that didn't contain a message, but it was sent from him because his voice came up saying his name, exactly like his voicemail. I recorded that message through a video camera, and then my girlfriend deleted the message. Fast forward to 2017, both my girlfriend and I were hanging out at my house when she was going through her voicemails again. Then it happened again, exactly the same thing. My father's voice, but no message.